The Valorian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 6,000 years. They had conquered 12,000 worlds. Their warships were so large that they blocked out the light of stars. Their soldiers numbered in the trillions. Their emperor Zethrel, the Undying, had never lost a single battle in 400 years of endless expansion. When their long-range sensors found a small blue planet at the edge of an unimportant spiral arm, the Empire did what it always did. They sent a fleet. Not a small fleet. Not a medium fleet. They sent the Third Subjugation Fleet, 200 of their most powerful dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a moon with a single shot. High Admiral Kethvorin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was 7 feet tall, with gray skin and 4 eyes that glowed a soft yellow. He had conquered 32 worlds personally. He had never known defeat. He looked at the blue planet on his screen and felt almost bored. This world called itself... its people called themselves humans. They had only recently discovered how to leave their own planet. They had no faster-than-light travel. They had no energy shields. Their weapons were laughably primitive. This conquest would take perhaps 3 days, maybe less. The Admiral ordered his communications officer to broadcast the standard message of subjugation. It was a simple message. Surrender now, become part of the Empire, and your people will live as servants. Refuse, and your world will burn. The message was translated into the primitive languages of Earth and sent on every frequency the humans used. Then the Admiral waited for their response. He expected panic. He expected world leaders begging for mercy. He expected the humans to immediately agree to all demands. As every other primitive species had done when faced with the might of the Valorian fleet, instead, he got a busy signal. The communications officer checked his equipment 3 times. Everything was working perfectly. The humans had simply not answered. The Admiral ordered the message sent again. And again. For 2 hours, they broadcast demands of surrender to a planet that seemed completely uninterested in responding. Finally, a signal came back. The Admiral straightened in his command chair, ready to receive the human surrender. A tired voice came through the speakers. It belonged to a man named Eric, who worked at a radio telescope facility in Norway. He had been eating his lunch when the alert started going off. "Lo, this is the Jodrell Bank Observatory," Eric said, his mouth still half full of sandwich. "We received your transmission. Please hold while I transfer you to the relevant department." Then there was music. Strange, repetitive music that seemed designed to slowly drive the listener insane. "Hi, Admiral Kethvorin, conqueror of worlds, destroyer of civilizations," had been put on hold. His bridge crew stared at their screens in confusion. This had never happened before. In 6,000 years of conquest, no species had ever put the Valorian Empire on hold. The Admiral's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he tried to understand what was happening. "Making us wait?" his second-in-command asked. "It appears so," the Admiral replied. They waited. The terrible music continued. 1 hour passed, then 2, then 3. Occasionally, a voice would interrupt to say, "Your call is important to us. Please continue to hold." The Admiral's crew began to shift uncomfortably. Some of them needed to use the bathroom. Others were getting hungry. But no one dared leave their station while waiting for the humans to respond. After 6 hours, the music finally stopped. A new voice came through. It belonged to a woman named Patricia who worked for something called the United Nations. She sounded pleasant, but also slightly rushed, like someone who had too many things to do and not enough time to do them. "Thank you for holding," Patricia said. "I understand you wish to discuss the possible invasion and conquest of Earth." "Yes," the Admiral replied, trying to maintain his dignity. "You will surrender immediately or face total destruction." I see, Patricia said. The Admiral could hear her typing something. "And you represent which organization exactly?" "The Valorian Empire. Masters of 12,000 worlds. Rulers of the galaxy. Could you spell that for me?" The Admiral spelled it. His bridge crew exchanged glances. This was not how conquests usually went. "Wonderful," Patricia continued. Now, I should let you know that first contact situations require extensive paperwork. I'm going to need you to submit your invasion demands in writing. We'll need them translated into the 6 official languages of the United Nations, which are English, French, Spanish, Russian, Arabic, and Chinese. You want us to translate our demands for your surrender? Yes, please. In triplicate. Also, I'll need to know if you've filed an environmental impact assessment for your invasion fleet. Those ships look quite large, and I imagine they produce significant emissions. The Admiral felt something he had not felt in 300 years. Confusion, complete and total confusion. You are facing total annihilation, he said slowly, as if speaking to a child. 200 warships hang above your world. Each one can destroy a city in seconds. Yes, that's very impressive, Patricia agreed. But we still need the paperwork. I don't make the rules, Admiral. I just follow them. Now shall I transfer you to our Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs? They handle the actual surrender negotiations. Though I should warn you, they're quite busy at the moment. There's been a staffing shortage. A staffing shortage, the Admiral repeated flatly. Budget cuts. You know how it is. Oh, and before I transfer you, I should mention that our offices close at 5 o'clock local time. If you could call back during business hours, that would be very helpful. Our operating hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, Central European Time. The Admiral stared at the blue planet on his screen. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Enemies had fought him. Enemies had fled from him. Enemies had begged him for mercy. But no enemy had ever asked him to call back during business hours. Transfer me to this department, he finally said. Of course. Please hold. The music started again. High Admiral Kethforin sat in his command chair, surrounded by enough firepower to crack a planet in half, and listened to hold music for another 4 hours. When the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs finally answered, they apologized for the wait and explained that they would need to schedule a meeting to discuss the invasion. The earliest available appointment was in 3 weeks. The Admiral accepted the appointment. He did not know what else to do. As the communication ended, his second-in-command approached carefully. Admiral, he said quietly, what are your orders? Kethvorin stared at the planet called Earth. Somewhere down there, a woman named Patricia was probably making herself a cup of tea, completely unconcerned about the 200 warships in her sky. We wait, the Admiral said, and we prepare a demonstration of our power. These humans will learn to fear us. But even as he said it, he felt a small seed of doubt in his chest. It was a feeling he had not experienced in centuries. He did not like it at all. High Admiral Kethvorin had spent 3 weeks waiting for his scheduled meeting with Earth's Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs. 3 weeks of listening to hold music. 3 weeks of being transferred between departments. 3 weeks of filling out forms that asked questions like, please describe the nature of your visit, and will you require parking for your spacecraft? He had conquered entire star systems in less time. Now he stood on his bridge, surrounded by his officers, and made a decision. If the humans would not give him the fear and respect he deserved through words, he would take it through action. Target their moon, he ordered. His weapons officer looked up in surprise. The entire moon, Admiral? No, a warning shot. Something to remind them who holds the power here. The flagship's main cannon hummed to life. A beam of pure energy, bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at it, lanced across the void of space. It struck the moon's surface and carved a crater 500 kilometers wide. Rock and dust exploded into space. The moon itself wobbled slightly in its orbit from the force of the impact. On Earth, every astronomer with a telescope watched in shock. News channels interrupted their regular programming. World leaders held emergency meetings. Surely now, the Admiral thought, the humans would understand. Earth's response came within the hour. It was a formal complaint about noise pollution, filed through the United Nations bureaucratic system. Attached to it was an invoice for lunar property damage, totaling approximately $3 trillion. The Admiral read the document twice, certain he had misunderstood something. They want us to pay them. His second-in-command asked, reading over his shoulder. Appears. Also attached was a note informing the admiral that his scheduled meeting had been moved up due to the urgency of the situation. Human representative would arrive at his flagship within 6 hours. Finally, the admiral thought. Finally, they were taking this seriously. He ordered his crew to prepare for the arrival of what would certainly be a higher-ranking military leader or politician. Someone with the authority to discuss Earth's complete and total surrender. 6 hours later, a small shuttle docked with the Eternal Dominion. The human who stepped out was not what the admiral expected. She was old. Very old. Her hair was white, and her face was covered in wrinkles. She walked slowly, with careful steps, and she carried a large bag stuffed with papers. She wore small glass circles in front of her eyes that she called reading glasses. Her name was Margaret Chen. She was 73 years old. She was a lawyer. "Thank you for seeing me, Admiral," she said, as she was escorted to the conference room. "I apologize for the informal meeting space, but as you can understand, time is of the essence." The Admiral towered over her. His 4 eyes glowed with barely contained anger. Behind him stood 12 of his most elite guards, each one capable of killing 100 soldiers in close combat. Margaret Chen set her bag on the table and began pulling out folders. "Now then," she said, adjusting her glasses, "let's discuss the legalities of your proposed invasion." "There are no legalities," the Admiral said coldly. "There is only power. We have it. You do not." Yes, I thought you might say that." Margaret opened a thick folder. "But you see, Admiral, I've spent the last 3 weeks studying something called the Galactic Concordat. This is the document that established the legal framework of the Valorian Empire, correct?" The Admiral was caught off guard. "You have read the Concordat?" "Oh yes, all 7,000 pages of it. Quite interesting, really. Your ancestors were very thorough lawmakers." She turned to a specific page, marked with a small, colorful tag. "I'd like to draw your attention to section 447, paragraph 12. She read aloud, "No civilization classified as pre-contact may be annexed, conquered or subjugated until such time as they have developed faster-than-light travel of their own design. Such civilizations are to be considered under protected status until they have independently achieved the technological threshold for galactic participation." Margaret looked up at the Admiral over her glasses. "Humanity has not developed faster-than-light travel. We are, by your own definition, a pre-contact civilization under protected status." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "That law is ancient. It has not been used in thousands of years. And yet, it has never been removed from your legal code." Margaret pulled out another folder. "I checked. Multiple times. I also found 17 legal precedents where the Valorian High Court upheld this exact provision. Would you like me to read them?" She did not wait for an answer. She read all 17 precedents, explaining each one in careful detail. She cited subsections, referenced related laws, and produced highlighted copies of documents that the Admiral's own legal scholars had apparently forgotten existed. For hours past by the end, the Admiral had summoned his own legal advisors. They were some of the finest legal minds in the Empire, scholars who had studied law for centuries. They examined Margaret's arguments. They checked her sources. They debated among themselves in rapid, worried voices. Finally, the senior legal advisor approached the Admiral with a grave expression. "Admiral," he said quietly, "she is correct. Our own laws forbid this conquest." The Admiral felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had been defeated, not by weapons, not by warriors, but by a 73-year-old woman with reading glasses and a bag full of papers. "Very well," he said through clenched teeth. "If we cannot conquer you legally, then we shall integrate you economically. We will share our technology with you, medicine that cures any disease, ships that travel faster than light, weapons beyond your imagination. In exchange, you will become dependent on us, and in time, You will join our empire willingly." Margaret smiled. It was a pleasant smile, but the Admiral noticed something sharp behind it. "It's very generous," she said. "But Earth isn't interested in handouts. We would prefer to negotiate." "Negotiate." The Admiral laughed. "What could you possibly offer us?" "I think you'd be surprised." Margaret began packing up her papers. "I'll arrange for our economic representatives to contact you. They're quite good at what they do." She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "One more thing, Admiral. The invoice for the lunar damage? We do expect payment. The interest rate is quite reasonable, but I should mention that late fees will apply after 30 standard galactic days." The Admiral stood in the empty conference room, surrounded by his guards, trying to understand what had just happened. His second-in-command entered a few minutes later. "Admiral, what are your orders?" Kethvorin stared at the door through which the old woman had disappeared. He had fought enemies who had fleets of thousands. He had battled species that could destroy planets. He had faced warriors who felt no pain and soldiers who could not die. None of them had frightened him. But this woman, with her papers and her laws and her polite smile, this woman who had defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy using nothing but words written by his own ancestors, she frightened him. "Begin economic negotiations," he said finally, "and find out everything you can about how humans do business." It was, he would later realize, the worst decision he had ever made. The Valorian Empire had dominated galactic trade for 6,000 years. Their currency, the imperial credit, was used on every civilized world. Their corporations controlled the mining of rare metals, the production of starship parts, and the distribution of medicine to 1 trillion citizens. Their economists were considered the greatest financial minds in existence. They had never met humans before. It started slowly. The Empire agreed to open limited trade with Earth as part of the integration process. Human businesses requested permission to send observers to study Valorian markets. It seemed harmless. Let the primitives see how a real economy worked. Perhaps they would learn something. The first human trade delegation arrived at the Imperial Commerce hub on the planet Varith Prime. There were 50 of them. Men and women in simple business clothes carrying small computing devices and smiling polite smiles. They asked many questions. They took many notes. They seemed very impressed by everything they saw. The Valorian traders were amused. These humans were like children watching adults work, fascinated by things they could never hope to understand. 6 months later, the amusement stopped. A human company calling itself Stellar Dynamics, LLC, filed paperwork to open a small office on a border world named Kethos 4. The local imperial governor approved it without much thought. Kethos 4 was an unimportant mining colony. What harm could one small human company do? The answer was quite a lot. Stellar Dynamics introduced something called venture capital to the miners of Kethos 4. It was a simple idea. If a miner had a good idea for a new business, but no money to start it, Stellar Dynamics would provide the money. In exchange, they would own a percentage of the business within 1 year. Stellar Dynamics owned pieces of 400 small businesses on Kethos 4 within 2 years. They controlled 60% of the planet's economy. The imperial governor sent a worried report to the capital. By the time it arrived, similar things were happening on 12 other border worlds. Another human company launched something called microloans to struggling Valorian families. The loans were small, with very low interest rates at first. Thousands of families took them. Then tens of thousands. Then millions. The humans were so friendly about it, so helpful and kind. No one noticed that the interest rates slowly increased over time. On the planet Morith, a human financial advisor introduced local merchants to something called credit cards. It was wonderful, the merchants said. They could buy things now and pay for them later. So convenient, 3 years later. The average household on Morith owed 6 times their annual income to human lending companies. But the true disaster was happening in the imperial core. In the glittering towers of the financial districts, where the greatest corporations in the galaxy did business. Korith. Industries was the largest warship manufacturer in the empire. They built the dreadnoughts. They produced the weapons. They were the industrial heart of Valorian military power. Their stock was considered the safest investment in the galaxy. A group of human investors began buying small amounts of Koreth stock, very small amounts. The purchases were spread across thousands of different accounts, making them nearly invisible. No single purchase was large enough to raise concerns. Then something strange happened. Rumors began spreading that Koreth Industries was having financial troubles. No one knew where the rumors started. The company's leaders insisted everything was fine. But the rumors continued, and soon the stock price began to fall. It fell slowly at first, then faster. Investors panicked. They sold their shares, afraid of losing everything. The stock price dropped further. More investors sold. It was like a wave, growing larger and larger. In the chaos, the human investors bought. They bought millions of shares at the new lower prices. By the time the market stabilized, a consortium called Terra Holdings owned 51% of Koreth Industries. The humans now controlled the company that built the Empire's warships. Emperor Zethrael demanded an explanation. He summoned his economic advisors to the Imperial throne room and ordered them to explain how this had happened. The advisors looked at each other nervously. Finally, the most senior among them stepped forward. "Your Majesty," she said, "the humans use techniques we have never encountered before. They call them various names: short selling, hostile takeovers, market manipulation, derivatives." She paused. "We are still trying to understand what derivatives are. Our mathematicians have been studying them for months. 3 of them have had nervous breakdowns." "You are telling me," the Emperor said slowly, "that these primitive humans have taken control of our industries using mathematics that our scholars cannot understand?" "Yes, Your Majesty." The Emperor turned to High Admiral Kethvorin, who stood at the side of the throne room. "This is your fault," the Emperor said. "You brought them here. You opened trade with them. Fix this." The Admiral bowed deeply. "Yes, Your Majesty." But the Admiral had no idea how to fix it. He was a military commander. He understood wars and battles and conquest. He did not understand something called a hedge fund, or why a human from a place called Singapore could somehow own 2 imperial mining corporations, despite never leaving his home planet. Humans were not conquering the Empire with weapons. They were conquering it with spreadsheets and contracts and financial instruments that no Valorian could understand. The Admiral needed a new strategy. Military force was legally forbidden. Economic competition had failed catastrophically. But there was one more option: pride. The Valorian Empire had always believed themselves superior to all other species. Superior in strength, in intelligence, in every measurable way. If they could prove this superiority publicly, the humans would lose their growing influence. The galaxy would see them for what they truly were: primitive, lucky, and vastly inferior. The Admiral proposed a solution to the Emperor: the Galactic Games, a grand tournament, broadcast to every world in the Empire. The greatest Valorian champions would compete against human representatives in tests of strength, endurance, intelligence, and will. The humans would be humiliated before the entire galaxy. Their reputation would be destroyed, and the Empire would reclaim its rightful position as the supreme power in existence. The Emperor agreed. The announcement was made. Invitations were sent. The humans accepted immediately. High Admiral Kethvorin smiled for the first time in months. Finally, he would have his victory. The Valorian champions were the finest specimens in the galaxy. They had never been defeated. They would crush these humans and restore honor to the Empire. He did not know that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history running down prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. He did not know about chess grandmasters. He did not know about Buddhist monks. He was about to learn. The Galactic Games were announced across 800 billion screens throughout the Valorian Empire. Every world, every station, every ship received the broadcast. It was the largest audience in the history of civilization. Everyone wanted to see the mighty empire put the primitive humans in their place. The games would take place on Varath Prime, Empire's greatest arena world. The stadium alone could hold 50 million spectators. Trillions more would watch from their homes across the galaxy. Hi. Admiral Kethvorin personally selected the Valorian champions. These were the finest warriors, scholars, and athletes the Empire had ever produced. Each one had trained for centuries. Each one had never known defeat. The Admiral was absolutely certain of victory. The human delegation arrived 3 days before the games began. The Admiral expected military heroes or Olympic athletes. Instead, he saw a strange collection of people. There was a middle-aged man from Kenya who worked as a running coach, a teenage girl from Russia who played a game called chess, an old monk from Thailand who spent most of his time sitting quietly with his eyes closed, a group of scientists, a few soldiers, some people who simply looked ordinary. The Admiral almost laughed. These were Earth's greatest champions? This would be easier than he thought. The first event was the test of endurance. Competitors would cross the burning plains of Kethos, a desert world where temperatures reached levels that could kill most species. The course was 200 kilometers long. Competitors had to complete it without vehicles, without assistance, without rest stops. The Valorian champion was Kreshtar, the Relentless. He had won this event 7 times. His body had been genetically enhanced for speed and endurance. He could run faster than ground vehicles and had once traveled for 3 days without stopping. The human representative was Samuel Kiprup, a 46-year-old ultramarathon runner from Kenya. He was thin and quiet, with gray starting to show in his hair. He smiled and shook Kreshtar's hand before the race began. The starting signal fired. Kreshtar exploded forward at incredible speed. Within minutes, he was far ahead, just a dot on the distant horizon. Samuel began jogging at a slow, steady pace. The commentators laughed. The human was clearly outmatched. This would be a quick victory. Hours passed. Kreshtar maintained his lead, running at speeds no human could match. But the desert was hot, very hot. Even his enhanced body began to tire. He slowed slightly, then more. The heat was draining him faster than expected. Behind him, Samuel kept jogging. The same pace, the same rhythm. He did not slow down. He did not speed up. He just kept moving, one foot in front of the other, hour after hour. After 15 hours, Kreshtar's lead had shrunk. After 18 hours, they were nearly even. The Valorian champion was struggling now, his enhanced muscles burning with exhaustion. The human was still jogging at exactly the same pace at the 20-hour mark. Kreshtar collapsed. He simply fell, his body unable to continue. Medics rushed to help him as Samuel jogged past with a friendly wave. The human completed the course in 22 hours, then turned around and jogged back to check on his fallen opponent. "Are you okay?" Samuel asked, offering Kreshtar water. That was a good race. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. No one had ever defeated Kreshtar, the Relentless. The commentators rushed to explain. Humans, it turned out, had evolved as something called persistence hunters. They did not have claws or fangs or venom. Instead, they had chased their prey across endless distances until the prey simply died of exhaustion. Their bodies were designed to keep moving long after other creatures had stopped. The second event was the test of strategy. Competitors would face each other in a complex war simulation, commanding virtual armies across a simulated galaxy. The game tested tactical thinking, pattern recognition, and the ability to predict enemy movements. The Valorian champion was Grand Strategist Vethmira. She had designed the military campaigns that conquered 30 worlds. Her mind was considered the sharpest in the Empire. She had never lost a strategic simulation. The human representative was Anastasia Petrov, a 16-year-old girl from Moscow. She had been playing chess since she was 4 years old. At age 12, she became the youngest grandmaster in history. She brought a small snack with her to the competition and ate it while waiting for the game to begin. Vethmira studied the young human with her 4 eyes. A child? They were sending a child against her? This was insulting. The simulation began. Virtual fleets clashed across holographic star maps. Vethmera deployed classic Valorian strategies, maneuvers that had crushed real enemies in real wars. Anastasia countered every move. She anticipated every strategy. She set traps that Vethmera walked into without realizing until it was too late. The grand strategist grew increasingly frustrated. How was this child reading her so easily? The answer was simple. Chess was not just a game. It was training for the human mind, centuries of accumulated strategic wisdom compressed into 64 squares. Every game Anastasia had ever played had prepared her for this moment. She won in 43 moves. Then she asked if there was anyone else who wanted to play. Because she was still hungry and had nothing else to do. The third event was meant to save. Valorian honor, the test of will. Competitors would be placed in complete isolation, in total darkness and silence, until they broke. No food, no water, no sensory input of any kind. It was designed to shatter the mind. The Valorian champion lasted 11 days before begging to be released. It was a new imperial record. The human representative, a Buddhist monk named Chanarong, emerged after 38 days. He thanked his hosts for the restful retreat and asked if he could stay longer. He had been meditating, he explained, and had not quite finished his spiritual exercises. The stadium fell silent. 38 days in total isolation, and the human wanted to stay longer. Event after event, the results were the same. Humans won endurance tests because their bodies refused to quit. They won intellectual challenges because their minds had been trained. By thousands of years of competitive games and education, they won psychological tests because some of them had apparently spent decades learning how to control every aspect of their consciousness. By the fourth day of the games, the broadcast viewership had tripled. But the viewers were no longer watching to see Valorian superiority. They were watching to see what impossible thing the humans would do next. High Admiral Kethforin stood in his private quarters, watching the latest defeat on his screen. A human mathematician had just solved a problem that Valorian scientists had been working on for centuries. She had done it in 3 hours. His second-in-command entered quietly. "Admiral, the Emperor demands an update." The Admiral turned off the screen. "Tell His Majesty that we need a new strategy." "What kind of strategy?" The Admiral thought for a long moment. He had tried military force. He had tried economic competition. He had tried physical and mental challenges. The humans had defeated him at every turn. There was only one option left. If he could not defeat humanity, he would destroy their reputation. He would show the galaxy what humans really were, deep down. Every species had darkness in their history. Every civilization had committed terrible acts. If he exposed humanity's past, the galaxy would turn against them. "Gather the archivists," the Admiral said. "I want to know everything about human history. Every war. Every atrocity. Every crime they have committed against each other." His second-in-command hesitated. "And then we broadcast it to the entire galaxy. We show everyone what these humans are truly capable of. We expose them as the barbarians they are." It seemed like the perfect plan. The Admiral could not have known that humanity's greatest strength was not their endurance, or their intelligence, or their strategic minds. It was the ability to survive their own darkness and choose to be better. Admiral Kethforin's archivists worked for 3 months. They studied every piece of human history they could find. They translated documents, analyzed recordings, and compiled the most complete record of humanity's past ever assembled. What they found was exactly what the Admiral had hoped for. Humans had been brutal to each other for their entire existence. Wars that killed millions. Weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. Governments that murdered their own people. Cruelty on scales that made Valorian conquests look gentle by comparison. The Admiral watched the compiled footage in his private quarters. He saw images of destruction and hatred that disturbed even him, a being who had personally conquered 32 worlds. These humans were savages. They had done terrible things to each other for thousands of years. He ordered the broadcast prepared. Every world in the Empire would see the truth about humanity. Every citizen would watch these primitives exposed as the barbarians they truly were. Their economic influence would collapse. Their diplomatic relationships would end. The galaxy would finally understand that humans were not special. They were just another violent species, no better than any other. The broadcast began on a quiet morning. Transmitted simultaneously to 800 billion screens across 12,000 worlds. It started with human wars. Ancient battles fought with swords and spears. Modern wars with tanks and aircraft. The two great wars that had killed tens of millions. Regional conflicts that had burned for decades. The footage was brutal and unflinching. Then came the atrocities. Governments that had murdered their own citizens by the millions. Systems designed to separate people by the color of their skin or the beliefs in their hearts. Images of suffering that no civilized being should ever have to see. Finally, the broadcast showed humanity's weapons. They had split the atom and built bombs capable of destroying entire cities in a single flash. They had pointed these weapons at each other, threatening to end their own species. They had come within minutes of launching them. Multiple times, the Admiral watched from his flagship, waiting for the response. He expected outrage. He expected disgust. He expected the galaxy to finally see humans as he saw them. Dangerous primitives, who should never have been allowed to leave their planet. The response came, but it was not what he expected. The first message arrived from an elderly Vreth philosopher named Kethin. The Vreth were an ancient species, one of the oldest in the galaxy. Kethin had studied civilizations for 400 years. His words carried great weight. "We have watched your broadcast," Kethin wrote. "We have seen humanity's darkness. But I must ask you, Admiral, did you watch until the end?" The Admiral frowned. Of course he had watched until the end. He had personally supervised every minute of the broadcast. More messages arrived. Thousands. Then millions. All asking the same question. "Did you see what came after?" The Admiral reviewed the broadcast again, more carefully this time. The wars were terrible, yes. But after each war, the humans had rebuilt. They had created organizations dedicated to preventing future conflicts. They had established laws to protect the innocent. They had tried again and again to be better than they were. The atrocities were horrifying. But after each atrocity, humans had risen up to stop them. Ordinary people had risked everything to save strangers. Entire movements had formed to fight against injustice. They had passed laws, changed governments, and transformed societies. And the atomic weapons, the bombs that could end their world. The humans had built them. They had aimed them at each other. They had come close to using them. But in the end, they had chosen not to. Every single time, when faced with the choice between destruction and survival, they had chosen survival. The Vreth philosopher sent another message. "We have always judged strength by those who never fell. We believed the greatest species were those who had never known darkness. But now we see the truth. The strongest species are not those who never fell. They are those who fell into the deepest darkness and climbed out again." These humans have been climbing their entire existence across the galaxy. The response to the broadcast was not condemnation. It was awe. Species who had thought themselves superior began to question their own histories. How many of them had faced such darkness? How many had come so close to self-destruction? And how many had chosen, again and again, to reach for something better? The humans had not hidden from their past. They studied it. They taught it to their children. They built monuments to remember their mistakes, so they would never repeat them. Their history was not a source of shame. It was proof of their resilience. "Hi, Admiral Kethorin." Received a request from Earth. A human ambassador wished to meet with him privately. The ambassador's name was Grace Okafor. She was an elderly woman, 92 years old, with white hair and kind eyes. She had lived through wars and famines and disasters. She had lost family members to violence. She had every reason to be bitter and angry. Instead, she smiled as she entered his quarters. "Admiral," she said, "I watched your broadcast. All of it. May I ask you a question?" He nodded slowly, still processing everything that had happened. "You have conquered 32 worlds," she said. "You have commanded fleets that could destroy planets. You have seen more of the galaxy than most beings could ever dream. But in all your years and all your travels, have you ever seen a species that knew exactly what it was capable of at its worst and still chose to be better?" The Admiral was silent for a long moment. "No," he finally admitted. "I have not." Grace sat down across from him. "When you broadcast our history, you wanted to expose our shame. But you exposed something else instead. You showed the galaxy what it looks like when a species refuses to give up on itself. When people keep choosing hope, even when they know how much pain that hope might cost them." "Why?" the Admiral asked. "Why do you keep choosing hope when you know what you are capable of?" Grace thought about the question carefully. Her answer would eventually be carved into monuments across 1,000 worlds, taught in schools throughout the galaxy, and remembered long after the Valorian Empire had transformed into something new. "Because hope is a choice, Admiral," she said. "Every single day, we wake up and choose whether to give in to our darkness or reach for something better. And every single day, enough of us choose better that we move forward just a little bit. Not always. Not perfectly. But enough." The Admiral looked at this frail old woman who had seen more hardship than most Valorian warriors, and who still smiled with genuine warmth. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we help you. We teach you what we have learned about climbing out of darkness. We show you that conquest is not the only path to greatness. And maybe, together, we build something better than either of us could build alone." 50 years later, the Valorian Empire still existed, but it had changed beyond recognition. Human advisors sat on the Imperial Council. Human economists had restructured the colonial debt that had crushed border worlds for generations. Human mediators had negotiated peace with 3 species the Empire had fought for millennia. The Empire had come to Earth seeking another conquest. They had found something far more powerful, a species that conquered through understanding and refused to give up on anyone, including their former enemies. High Admiral Kethforin, now retired, lived in a small home on a quiet world. On his wall hung a plaque, a gift from Margaret Chen, the lawyer who had first defeated him with his own laws. The plaque read, "The strongest weapon is an open hand." He had never figured out if it was a human proverb or a legal threat. Knowing humans, it was probably both. But he had learned something in his years of working alongside them, something that had changed him from a conqueror into a builder. Strength was not about domination. It was about choosing every single day to be better than you were yesterday. The humans had taught him that, and the galaxy had never been the same.